From elite fashion shows to excessive merchandise, Neon Genesis Evangelion has been an enormous influence on Japanese culture and the anime industry in general. Since its initial release in 1995, the show has not lost popularity or conversation and continues to test what anime can be. Neon Genesis Evangelion is deemed noteworthy because of its complex themes of escapism, religion, depression, and philosophy that makes the viewers question their own merits. Neon Genesis Evangelion starts with Shinji Ikari, a 14-year-old boy who is contacted by his estranged father to pilot large robots for his secret intergovernmental agency. The robots are called as Evangelions and serve to combat the angels, who are equally large aliens who are driven to destroy the human race. And the only thing that they can do is fight with Evangelions, because the Evangelions are the only forces that are capable of defeating them. Shinji Ikari faces a recurring dilemma. He doesn't want to pilot the EVA, but he must to save the humanity. This premise may sound bizarre or boring, but the show has a very complex plot that intertwines all the characters and makes commentary on the dangers of escapism. Shinji knows that he is the only one up for this task, but it is exhausting and difficult to have the world on your left shoulder and your normal teenage problems on your right shoulder. Plus, his cold father does not ease this tension, because it is clear that his father does not care for Shinji as a person but only cares about his usefulness. He feels alone and incompetent, and the only person that he knows he can rely on is himself, but he doesn't have the time to understand or to love himself. Evangelion features a number of elements familiar to anime fans, most notably teenagers piloting giant robots to fight monsters. But from the beginning, something is different. The robots are fleshy, angular creatures, and the opposite monsters called angels are often abstract and strange. Rather than being a hot-blooded anime protagonist in the tradition of Dragon Ball's Goku, Evangelion Shinji Ikari is a withdrawn, depressive teen trying to connect with his distant and commanding father. The people around him, from his guardian Misato to his fellow EVA pilot Asuka and Rei, are revealed to be just as flawed, which may have interpreted as a reflection of the fact that creator Hideaki Anno wrote Evangelion as a meditation on his experience with depression. Evangelion at the time it first came out was earth-shattering in the Japanese anime panorama. It was the first big robot series that delved deeper into the psychological aspects of a teenager being forced to fight unknown monsters inside a giant thing. This is also heightened by this thing being directly connected to the pilot's brain and making the pilot actually feel whatever the thing is feeling. Also, Japan and its fans loves their drama, and the more drama there is, the better. Evangelion was at the time the most dramatic anime without an 18+ rating to ever being produced after Ashitano Joe. The production value was as well off the scale for that time, and the animation was basically the best the industry could offer at that time. The religion and esoteric references are another aspect that Japanese public really likes, and Evangelion had a perfect mix of action and religion and esoteric references. In short, it is the best thing that could come out in Japan at that time in the terms of story and execution, and it has managed to preserve its reputation over the years, which is not something easy to do. Most popular series that gets dragged over the years eventually gets criticized for losing their original charm. Look at Dragon Balls and even The Simpsons. Plus, there is a huge story behind the production of Evangelion anime. It was a low-budget anime and had a rather higher burn rate of capital. Now let's see why. Even though it was a low-budget anime, it is the 17th highest grossing franchise of all time. Gainax was the production studio which gave us Evangelion. It was established in 1984, but it was in 1995 that people started to recognize Gainax for majorly due to Evangelion, and today it is known for panty and stocking with garter belt, Gurren Lagann and FLCL. It was Hideaki Anno, one of the founders, who showed maximum passion towards the series, since he claimed that this work reflects his own 4 years of depression, which can be inferred from the Ikari Shinji's depiction in the anime. Hideaki Anno faced serious failures around 1992, and this forced him into deep depression. Gainax has never undertaken a project of a scale as large as Evangelion. Its earlier works are like Royal Space Force, which was also a commercial failure as a major reason for Anno's depression. It is said that Anno was so passionate related to Evangelion that the initial plan was to showcase 28 angels instead of the AH-17. Also, the human instrumentality project was meant to end up in failure. He was a part of another project by the name Aoki Uru, which was before Evangelion. Yasuhira Takeda mentioned this as a good riddance in his book The Notenki Memories. He lived quite lavishly, but once the employees stopped coming to work, his salary shrunk drastically and had to borrow against his salary for living expenses. That's a founder we are talking about. The side business of selling adult video games thrived only for a short period due to frequent bans. Gainax was in serious financial trouble due to the suspension of Aoki Uru. Following suspension of Aoki Uru, Gainax managed everything with the remainder of employees and was able to meet the deadlines by only a whisker. The initial cut of the first 2 episodes were aired in an event just 3 months prior to the release date of the first episode. It is said that by episode 9, Gainax ran out of large chunk of its funding, and after episode 13, cost-cutting techniques such as the recap episode, repetitive stills, etc. were employed. Aoki Uru is one of the major causes from which Gainax was not able to recover till Evangelion. 11 angels were already featured till episode 13, with the remaining 6 shown over the last 13 episodes, just to cut on the costs relating to action sequences. The last 2 episodes were nothing but a depressed Shinji sitting in the middle of nowhere with repetitive dialogues and contradicting statements by Rei, Katsuragi and Asuka, with their nude images flashing again and again like a broken record. It was only after the success of Evangelion that the movie The End of Evangelion was released, as the figurines and official artworks sold like crazy after Gainax convinced Sega to market its Evangelion merchandise. And I must say that no son of Einstein could figure out that the movie was actually the real meaning behind the human instrumentality project. Episode 26 ended with everyone clapping for Shinji on the success of the project, while the movie almost ended with all of the humanity being reduced to LCL, which was also a huge factor behind the success of Evangelion. Anno's deeply personal involvement with Evangelion encouraged studio to give more control to creators, who has previously often been restricted to production committees worrying about merchandise sales. Production invested their budget in fewer, higher quality episodes, leading to the 13 and 26 episode runs that are now common in anime today. This increased creative control led to several series such as Cowboy Bebop and The Big O, which were both popular worldwide and received critical acclaim. Evangelion's use of symbolism instead of literal plotting paved the way for even more abstract and cerebral series like Serial Experiments Lane and Revolutionary Girl Utena. Evangelion didn't merely appeal to viewers' intellect. For many, it also had a romantic appeal. Most notably, the mecha pilots Rei and Asuka became a dyad of romantic archetypes. Both characters whose seeming hostility towards male lead Shinji betrayed secret affection and insecurity. The fierce and frequently verbally abusive Asuka popularized the tsundere archetype, which is still seen in anime everywhere, from shonen action characters like Naruto's Sakura to romantic comedies' love interest. A tsundere is essentially a female character who frequently insults and belittles the main character only to show affection for him in a vulnerable moment. The craze for tsundere reached its apex in the 2000s when Rei Kugimiya became one of Japan's most sought after voice actress by portraying tsundere leads in series like Shakugan no Shana and The Familiar of Zero. And the character type is a staple in romantic comedy anime to this day. For her part, Rei inspired a smaller but still considerable number of kunderes, an archetype that is similar to tsundere but replaces anger with cool indifferences. Ice Queen characters ranging from Eureka 7's Eureka to Teen Titans Raven has been viewed as successors to Rei. All of the Evangelion's characters were influential and imitated, but in particular, Rei and Asuka created a prototype for entertaining and romantic interests that future series would use again and again. Neon Genesis Evangelion remains so polarizing because of the philosophy of what it means to be human that the show continues to question. It entails and explores each of the characters' deals with past traumas, adulthood, death, rebirth, and eternity. The viewers explores every important figures of Shinji's life and metaphorically puts them under a microscope and analyze their flaws. Most significantly, creator Hideaki Anno has frequently spoken about having a mental and artistic breakdown while creating Evangelion and formulating his anxiety into the story. It plays as a metaphor for Anno's artistic creation, depression, and speculation of life itself. This can be seen most prominently during the last 2 episodes, which changed the script and spent 20 plus minutes exploring what it means to be alive, and of course it was also because of the reason of financial crisis in the studio. Neon Genesis Evangelion is remarkably one of the most well-known anime in Japan and one of the first anime to be as popular as it is with such a dark and depressing output on live. It has shifted how mainstream anime can be written and continues to inspire millions of viewers who watch the series. Some great animes to get into if you like Neon Genesis includes FLCL, Serial Experiments Lane, Madoka Magica, and Haibane Renmei. Now you might ask, what happened to the studio which delivered us this masterpiece? Hideaki Anno has never quite been able to escape shadows of his creation, but the success of Evangelion allowed him to work on projects ranging from Toho's recent Shin Godzilla movie to His and Her Circumstances TV adaptation. Anno also split off from Gainax to form Studio Khara in 2006, which led to creation of rebuild of Evangelion movies. Anno's clearly personal connection to Evangelion both elevated his own fame as a director and helped to create an inspiring role of anime director. After the Trigger and Khara departures, Studio Gainax is now mostly defunctioned, with what remains embroiled in legal issues. Nevertheless, the impact of Gainax works, most notably Evangelion, is still felt in the modern anime in everything from its characters to episode lengths. The series' multiple endings and interpretations are still divisive among many fans, but the massive impact that Neon Genesis Evangelion had on anime is hard to deny. What are your thoughts about Neon Genesis Evangelion anime series and the movies that came afterwards? Let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And that's it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I post daily anime content about top 10 top 5 listings, anime reviews, recommendations, and breakdown videos like this. And that's it for today's video, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Sayonara.